Ladies and gentlemen, when a woman realizes that a man has lost interest, her reaction can vary. Some respond with emotion, others with indifference, and some with quiet understanding. But regardless of her initial response, the principles of self-awareness and emotional control ultimately shape her actions. Today we explore this from a rational, disciplined and composed perspective. At first, there may be confusion. She wonders if she misread the signals, if she was mistaken in believing there was mutual connection. This is natural. Humans seek understanding, especially in matters of the heart. However, a woman grounded in emotional resilience does not allow uncertainty to consume her. She acknowledges reality without resistance. When a woman first realizes that a man has lost interest, the initial reaction is often confusion. It is a moment of emotional disarray where she finds herself questioning what went wrong, when things started to change, and whether she played a role in the shift. This phase is not merely about noticing a difference in behavior, it is about trying to make sense of it. Human relationships, particularly those built on emotional connection, are complex. When a dynamic that once seemed warm and engaging turns distant, it is natural for the mind to seek answers. At first, she may replay past conversations in her head, searching for signs she might have overlooked. Was there a moment when his responses became less enthusiastic? Did he start canceling plans more often? Was there a subtle shift in his tone or the frequency of his messages? She might scroll through old texts, comparing how things were before to how they are now, hoping to pinpoint the exact moment things changed. This process is often subconscious, an instinctive attempt to piece together a puzzle that no longer fits the way it once did. The confusion deepens when there is no clear reason for the withdrawal. If there was no argument, no defining moment of conflict, and no significant shift in her own behavior, she may feel blindsided. One of the hardest things to accept in human relationships is when someone loses interest without an obvious cause. People often expect dramatic events to precede emotional distance. A betrayal, a major disagreement, or an external force pulling them apart. But in many cases, interest fades quietly, without explanation. This ambiguity makes it even harder to process, because the mind craves clarity. She might initially dismiss it as a temporary change. Perhaps he is just busy. Maybe he is dealing with personal issues that have nothing to do with her. It is easy to rationalize someone's distant behavior, especially if the connection was once strong. She tells herself that people go through phases, that interest fluctuates, and that a few unanswered messages or a delayed response should not be cause for concern. In this phase, hope lingers. Hope that things will return to normal, that his temporary distance is just that, temporary. But as time passes, the subtle signs become undeniable. The effort she once felt from him begins to wane. The excitement in his voice diminishes. His responses become shorter, less engaged, or sometimes non-existent. She notices the difference between being an afterthought and being a priority. This is when confusion turns into something deeper, a mix of frustration and sadness. She may start asking herself difficult questions. Did she do something wrong? Was she not enough? What changed? These questions do not come from a place of weakness, but from a desire to understand. In this stage, self-doubt can creep in. Even the most confident person can find themselves second-guessing their worth when faced with indifference from someone they once shared a connection with. The mind plays tricks, making her believe that if she had just done something differently, said something else, acted another way, things might have been different. This is the emotional turbulence that often accompanies the realization of lost interest. It is not just about the other person pulling away, it is about the internal dialogue that follows. Yet within this confusion, something important is happening. She is becoming more aware. While she may initially focus on trying to make sense of his actions, she is also beginning to recognize patterns, both in his behavior and in her own emotional responses. The more she reflects, the more she understands that her confusion is not just about him, it is about expectations, attachment, and the natural human tendency to seek validation in relationships. She starts to see that the uncertainty she feels is not just about this one person, it is about the fundamental nature of human connection and detachment. And then comes the realization. The confusion is not something to be solved externally. No amount of analyzing his words or actions will bring clarity if he has already checked out emotionally. She understands that she can seek answers, but those answers may never come from him. They must come from within. The moment she stops seeking a logical explanation for his withdrawal is the moment she starts to regain control over her emotions. This phase of initial confusion is a necessary step in emotional growth. It is uncomfortable, even painful, but it serves a purpose. It forces her to look inward, to question not only his actions but her own reactions. Why does his loss of interest affect her so deeply? Is it truly about him, or is it about something deeper? Perhaps a fear of rejection, a longing for certainty, or an attachment to a version of reality that no longer exists. These are difficult questions, but they lead to growth. Ultimately, confusion is the mind's attempt to bridge the gap between expectation and reality. It is the struggle between what she believed was happening and what is actually unfolding. But in time, she will realize that clarity does not always come from finding the perfect answer. It comes from accepting that some answers are unnecessary. The truth is simple. When someone loses interest, it is not a reflection of her worth, but of the ever-changing nature of human emotions. And once she fully understands this, the confusion will begin to fade, making room for acceptance and peace. Acceptance of reality is not an immediate response. It is a process that unfolds gradually, often after the initial wave of confusion and self-questioning. When a woman realizes that a man has lost interest, her mind instinctively searches for explanations, for something tangible to hold on to. But eventually she comes to a pivotal moment, a realization that all the analysis, all the questioning, and all the attempts to make sense of his withdrawal will not change the situation. She begins to understand that, regardless of the reason behind his fading interest, the outcome remains the same. And in that realization, she finds the first step toward acceptance. At first, acceptance may feel like defeat, as if letting go means surrendering to something painful. But in reality, acceptance is not weakness. It is strength. It is the moment she stops resisting what is beyond her control. She understands that emotions, like the tides, shift naturally, and no amount of effort can force someone to feel what they no longer do. This is not an easy truth to embrace. It is far easier to cling to hope, to believe that if she just tries a little harder, says the right words, or shows more patience, things might return to the way they were. But hope, when misplaced, can become a burden. She may recall the warmth that once existed between them, the effortless conversations, the shared laughter, the way he used to look at her with admiration. And for a time, it is difficult to reconcile that with his current indifference. She wonders how something so alive could fade into something so distant. The human heart often struggles with change, especially when that change is unexpected. But the truth is, just as interest can spark suddenly, it can also fade just as quickly. She realizes that this is not a reflection of her worth, but a simple reality of human nature. The hardest part of acceptance is relinquishing the need for closure. She may never receive an explanation for his change of heart, and even if she did, it would not alter the outcome. Some people drift away not because of a single moment or action, but because feelings evolve in ways even they cannot fully explain. There is a quiet power in understanding this, that sometimes there is no grand reason, no hidden meaning, no deep-seated issue to uncover. It simply is. And once she stops searching for an answer that may never come, she finds peace. With acceptance comes the recognition that she does not need to chase clarity from someone who has already chosen distance. The more she tries to force understanding, the more she prolongs her own discomfort. But when she stops fighting against reality, she begins to feel lighter. The emotional weight she carried, the frustration, the sadness, the endless cycle of questions starts to lessen. She sees that holding on to something that no longer holds on to her is not love, it is resistance to truth. And the moment she allows herself to let go, she makes space for something far more valuable, inner peace. She also begins to notice the signs she once ignored. Looking back, she sees that his withdrawal did not happen overnight. Perhaps he was less present in conversations, less eager to make plans, less engaged in the little details that once mattered. At the time, she brushed off these changes, rationalizing them as temporary. But in acceptance, she sees them for what they were, indications of a fading connection. And instead of blaming herself for missing the signs, she acknowledges them with clarity. This is not an exercise in regret. It is a lesson in awareness. There is a quiet transformation that happens when she stops resisting the truth. She no longer feels the urge to prove her worth to someone who does not recognize it. She stops replaying moments, wondering what she could have done differently. Instead, she directs her energy inward, focusing on herself rather than on someone who has already moved on emotionally. This shift is subtle at first, but it grows stronger with time. The more she accepts reality, the more she realizes that losing someone's interest is not the same as losing herself. And then, one day, she wakes up and feels a little different. The ache in her chest is softer, the questions in her mind are fewer, and the need for validation has lessened. She no longer waits for a message that may never come, no longer seeks an explanation that would change nothing. She simply moves forward, not because she has forgotten what once was, but because she has accepted what is. In that acceptance, she finds something she did not expect: freedom. Detachment from the outcome is one of the most difficult yet liberating processes a woman can go through. When she realizes that a man has lost interest, at first emotions are deeply entangled in the situation. There is a natural instinct to hold on, to hope, to analyze every detail in search of an explanation. But as time passes, she begins to understand that clinging to an outcome she cannot control only prolongs her suffering. True peace comes not from forcing someone to stay, but from letting go with grace. The process of detachment does not happen overnight. It begins subtly, with small realizations that gradually take root in her mind. She starts to recognize that no matter how much she tries to understand his withdrawal, the reality remains the same. His interest has faded. This realization, though painful at first, becomes the foundation for her emotional shift. She begins to see that her happiness cannot depend on whether or not he chooses to stay. Instead, her emotional well-being must be built on something deeper, something that is not dictated by external factors. She notices how much mental energy she has spent fixating on what went wrong, replaying conversations and questioning whether she could have done something differently. The more she does this, the more she realizes how exhausting it is. She begins to see that her attachment to the outcome is not serving her. It is keeping her stuck in a place of uncertainty and self-doubt. This is when she starts to make a conscious effort to shift her focus inward. She understands that the more she fixates on his actions, the more power she gives away. And so, little by little, she starts to reclaim that power. Detachment does not mean she stops caring entirely. It means she no longer allows the situation to dictate her emotional state. She acknowledges her feelings without letting them control her. She no longer checks her phone constantly, waiting for a response that may never come. She no longer feels the need to seek validation from someone whose actions have already shown where they stand. Instead, she redirects that energy toward herself. She starts to invest in things that bring her fulfillment outside of the relationship. She pours herself into her passions, her personal growth, and the things that make her feel whole. With detachment comes a shift in perspective. She begins to see that people come and go, and not every connection is meant to last. She no longer views his disinterest as a personal failure, but rather as a simple reality of life, one that is neither good nor bad, just something that is. She realizes that trying to control or resist this reality only creates more frustration. The moment she accepts that she cannot force someone to stay is the moment she starts to feel free. As she continues to detach, she finds herself feeling lighter. She no longer feels the emotional weight of wondering what could have been. She no longer places her happiness in someone else's hands. She understands that just because someone loses interest does not mean she has lost anything of true value. Her worth is not diminished simply because another person failed to recognize it. She knows now that real connection cannot be forced. It must be mutual, effortless, and natural. Eventually, she no longer reacts emotionally to his absence. Where there was once longing, there is now neutrality. Where there was once attachment, there is now peace. She has learned one of the most valuable lessons in life. Letting go is not about giving up. It is about making space for what is truly meant for her. And in doing so, she experiences a kind of freedom that is far more fulfilling than any forced relationship could ever be. Inner strength is a quiet, steadfast force that rises within a woman when she faces the realization that a man has lost interest. It is not the loud, dramatic strength of defiance, but rather the calm resilience of someone who understands that their worth is not contingent upon the affection or attention of others. This strength begins to manifest when she no longer seeks external validation and starts to trust in her own abilities, values, and sense of self. At first, the thought of losing someone who once showed interest can shake her confidence. It may lead to feelings of doubt, confusion, and sadness, all of which are entirely natural reactions. But as she processes these emotions, she begins to tap into a deeper well of resilience that has always been within her. This strength is not built overnight. It develops over time, shaped by the acceptance of her feelings and the conscious decision to not let them define her. What she comes to realize is that her worth does not hinge on the attention or approval of one person. She is not defined by how someone else perceives her. The loss of interest does not diminish who she is, but rather gives her the opportunity to reconnect with herself. As she faces the pain and disappointment, she begins to see it as a catalyst for personal growth, not as a reflection of her inadequacy. She starts to rebuild her sense of self-worth from within, understanding that she is whole on her own. Inner strength is the ability to sit with discomfort without allowing it to consume you. When a woman realizes that someone has lost interest, the natural reaction is to feel a sense of rejection, and this can be deeply painful. But instead of running from that pain, she faces it with quiet determination. She acknowledges the hurt, gives herself permission to feel it, but refuses to let it control her actions. She does not spiral into self-criticism or desperation for answers. Instead, she chooses to move through the pain with grace, knowing that this moment will not define her forever. As she begins to process her emotions, she also starts to gain clarity about her own values and what she truly wants in a relationship. She understands that someone's loss of interest is not a reflection of her unworthiness, but a sign that the connection was not right for her. This understanding allows her to maintain her dignity and avoid falling into the trap of trying to change herself to win back someone's affection. She realizes that she is not someone to be won or lost, but a person worthy of respect and love, regardless of the fluctuations in someone else's feelings. This inner strength is further solidified when she stops seeking external validation. She begins to find value in herself, not because of someone else's attention, but because of her own abilities, accomplishments, and self-awareness. She sees herself as a complete individual, independent of anyone else's opinions or actions. Her happiness no longer depends on being seen or desired by someone who has lost interest. Instead, she starts to derive satisfaction from the things she can control: her personal growth, her passions, and her own well-being. The strength also emerges in her ability to let go. Letting go is not about giving up, it is about having the courage to release what no longer serves her. Inner strength is about knowing when to hold on and when to step away, and trusting in her ability to choose what is best for her. When she realizes someone no longer values her presence, inner strength gives her the wisdom to recognize that this is an opportunity to make space for something more aligned with who she is and what she deserves. This strength is also reflected in how she treats herself. She no longer allows herself to be caught in cycles of self-blame or self-judgment. She begins to practice self-compassion, understanding that emotional setbacks are a natural part of life and growth. She gives herself grace rather than harshly critiquing every misstep. As she builds this inner resilience, she finds that she is better equipped to handle future challenges, not only in relationships, but in all aspects of her life. Ultimately, inner strength becomes a cornerstone of her emotional well-being. It is the foundation upon which she can build a fulfilling, independent life. She knows that while relationships may come and go, the strength she has developed within herself will remain constant. It is this strength that allows her to face difficult truths, to move through discomfort without being consumed by it, and to never lose sight of her own worth. She understands that the end of one connection does not mean the end of her journey. It is simply a new chapter, one that she will navigate with the confidence and resilience that comes from knowing her true value. Self-focus and growth become vital pillars of a woman's emotional resilience when she faces the realization that a man has lost interest. Initially, the sting of rejection may create a sense of loss, and it is easy to fall into the trap of self-doubt and questioning one's worth. However, as time passes and emotions settle, a powerful transformation begins. She shifts her focus from the external situation, the loss of his interest, to an inward journey of self-discovery and growth. This shift is not immediate. It evolves through reflection, acceptance, and a conscious effort to reorient her energy toward herself rather than the fading connection. In the aftermath of a lost connection, there is often a natural tendency to search for reasons, to wonder what could have been done differently, and to linger on the emotional fallout. This is a typical part of the grieving process, but it does not have to define her. Over time, she begins to realize that her worth is not tethered to another person's opinion of her. Instead of focusing on the man who has moved on, she begins to refocus on herself, reconnecting with the person she was before the relationship and the one she wants to become moving forward. Self-focus is not about selfishness. Rather, it is about understanding that in order to offer love, compassion, and connection to others, she must first cultivate these qualities within herself. Person has the opportunity to show love. As she takes the time to heal and reflect, she recognizes that she deserves to be in a relationship where her worth is appreciated, where she is valued and loved for who she truly is, not for who she tries to be in the eyes of someone else. This understanding is the beginning of her growth. She stops seeking validation from external sources and starts validating herself. She begins to acknowledge her strengths, the things that make her unique, and the ways in which she has already proven her resilience throughout life. During this phase of self-focus, she starts to invest her energy in activities that nurture her spirit and contribute to her personal growth. Whether it's dedicating time to her career, learning a new skill, or pursuing a passion she once neglected, she discovers the joy of growing for the sake of her own fulfillment, not because it will somehow earn her the attention of someone else. She finds that when her energy is directed inward, she becomes more attuned to her own desires and goals, and less concerned with the ebb and flow of someone else's feelings. This growth becomes evident in the way she begins to view herself. Where there once was insecurity, there is now a quiet confidence. She understands that growth is not just about healing from a setback, but about evolving into a stronger, more self-aware version of herself. She no longer measures her value by her relationship status, and she no longer attaches her identity to how others perceive her. She recognizes that being single or not having someone's attention does not diminish her sense of worth. Instead, she learns that solitude offers a unique opportunity for growth, allowing her to reconnect with her passions, her purpose, and her personal goals. Through self-focus, she also becomes more attuned to her needs. She recognizes the importance of emotional boundaries, understanding that her happiness must come from within and not rely on the presence or approval of another person. She learns the delicate art of saying no to things that drain her energy and saying yes to things that uplift her. Her personal growth leads her to recognize that the relationships she forms moving forward should be based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than a desire to fill an emotional void. She understands that she must first be whole on her own before she can offer true connection to another. This growth is also marked by the way she begins to approach future relationships. While she may still value companionship, she no longer views it as a necessity for her happiness. She understands that real connection arises from two individuals who are whole and secure in themselves, rather than from the need to seek validation from one another. She approaches potential relationships with a sense of groundedness, no longer eager to mold herself to fit someone else's ideal or to alter her identity for the sake of a connection. She realizes that her true value lies in her authenticity and any relationship that is meant to thrive will do so because it is rooted in mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Not because she sacrifices who she is to make someone else stay. As she continues her journey of self-focus and growth, she begins to see setbacks and challenges as opportunities to become even stronger. She learns that life is filled with moments of change and transition, and that these moments do not define her, but contribute to her evolution. She discovers that it is not about avoiding pain or loss, but about learning to navigate these experiences with grace and resilience, knowing that every phase of life, even those marked by disappointment, carries with it the potential for personal growth. Eventually, she reaches a place where her happiness is no longer dictated by someone else's attention or affection. Her sense of fulfillment comes from within, from the work she has done on herself and the person she has become. She is no longer dependent on external validation to feel whole, and in that freedom she is able to move forward with confidence, knowing that her journey of self-focus and growth is ongoing and ever-evolving. Moving forward with dignity after the realization that a man has lost interest is one of the most empowering and transformative experiences a woman can go through. It requires immense strength, resilience, and self-respect. At first, it may seem like an uphill battle, as emotions run high and there is a natural desire to understand, seek closure, or somehow reclaim what has been lost. However, true dignity lies in the ability to navigate the pain of a lost connection while maintaining a sense of self-worth and honor. The first step in moving forward with dignity is acknowledging and accepting the reality of the situation without letting emotions take over. The natural instinct might be to wallow in sadness or to fall into patterns of self-blame. However, dignity comes from recognizing that while rejection can hurt, it does not define who she is. She is not less valuable because someone has chosen to move on. This realization is not an easy one, but it is essential in allowing her to rise above the immediate emotional turmoil. It's important to understand that a relationship, or the absence of one, does not diminish her identity or her capacity to love and be loved. As she processes the feelings of loss and hurt, dignity requires that she does not let these emotions lead to self-destructive behavior. It is tempting to seek revenge, harbor resentment, or even chase after someone who has clearly moved on. But true dignity means resisting these impulses. It means not allowing bitterness to fester, not letting the pain of being rejected turn into anger or resentment. Instead, she focuses on maintaining her self-respect, treating herself and the situation with grace. This is not about suppressing feelings or pretending everything is okay, but rather choosing to honor herself by not letting the situation compromise her integrity. Dignity is also found in the way she handles herself in the face of uncertainty. Often, when someone loses interest, there is a sense of confusion, especially if the relationship was once fulfilling or meaningful. It may leave her questioning what went wrong or what she could have done differently. However, moving forward with dignity means that she refrains from obsessively analyzing every moment of the relationship or every conversation in search of an answer. Instead, she acknowledges that some things are beyond her control. She accepts that not all relationships are meant to last, and that sometimes people change in ways that are unpredictable and unexplainable. Dignity is found in the ability to let go of the need for closure and to understand that her worth is not tied to the outcome of this one relationship. The act of moving forward with dignity also requires a shift in focus. It is so easy to get fixated on what has been lost and to continue yearning for the person who no longer shares the same feelings. But dignity comes from refocusing energy on the things that matter most: her own well-being, growth, and happiness. It is the ability to direct her attention toward personal development, whether that be through pursuing new hobbies, focusing on career aspirations, or reconnecting with friends and family. It's a conscious decision to not let the absence of someone define her day-to-day life or her sense of purpose. She shifts from a mindset of lack to one of abundance, recognizing that she has the power to create her own happiness, independent of others. Moving forward with dignity also involves maintaining self-respect in interactions with the person who has lost interest. While it is natural to feel hurt or confused, Dignity requires that she does not resort to begging for attention or trying to manipulate the situation in her favor. She does not try to convince him to stay or lower her standards in order to gain his affection. Instead, she holds her ground, respecting her own value and not compromising her integrity to seek validation. She understands that relationships should be based on mutual respect and connection, not on convincing someone to stay who no longer wants to be there. Her dignity lies in knowing that she is worthy of a relationship where both people are equally invested and where both partners honor one another's needs, emotions, and boundaries. Another important aspect of moving forward with dignity is embracing the idea of growth and learning. Rather than seeing the end of this relationship as a failure, she chooses to view it as an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. She takes the time to learn from the experience, reflecting on what worked, what didn't, and how she can continue to evolve as a person. Dignity is found in the ability to take responsibility for her own actions, without blaming herself entirely for the outcome. She knows that no one is perfect, and that relationships are complex, but rather than dwelling on mistakes, she uses them as lessons that can help her build stronger, healthier connections in the future. There is an immense power in maintaining dignity through this process. As she moves forward, she may realize that her confidence and sense of self-worth have grown stronger. The experience of facing rejection and rising above it with dignity can be transformative. It teaches her that her value does not depend on external factors. She is inherently worthy of love, respect, and fulfillment. She no longer looks for approval from others to feel complete, because she knows her worth is self-defined. In the end, moving forward with dignity is not about forgetting or erasing the past, but about honoring herself as she moves into the future. It's about knowing that she deserves to be treated with respect and love, and that any relationship she enters into should reflect this belief. Her dignity is a quiet, unshakable strength that allows her to move forward with grace, knowing that no one else's loss of interest can ever diminish who she is at her core. In the end, moving forward with dignity is not just about surviving the pain of rejection. It's about thriving in the face of it. It's about embracing the opportunity for personal growth, discovering new depths of self-respect, and realizing that your worth is never dependent on the interest or affection of another person. The strength lies in knowing that your journey is yours alone, and no one has the power to define your value. Through self-focus, growth, and resilience, you emerge not weaker but stronger, more grounded, more authentic, and more empowered than ever before. Remember, it's not the relationships you lose that define you, but the way you stand tall and carry yourself through the challenges life brings. You have everything within you to move forward with grace and dignity, because your value is unshakable. Keep walking in the direction of your own truth and watch as you transform the pain into power.